My name is Marshall. I'm from Albany, New York, originally. Well, I was born in San Diego, California, grew up in Albany, New York. I've been to numerous places. I'm gonna cut that in the montage, don't worry.
Pillars of joy can be.
Black. I think it's important to be around people like me so I can understand my culture more, understand where I come from and stuff, but it's also always good to have diversity.
I don't really think skin color is important, like, to me. I don't think someone should judge anyone just based on their skin color. Skin color doesn't make you who you are.
It's never had any real importance to me. Like, it was just skin color, like, just like the sky is blue.
I don't think it's that important, just the way the sun's affecting our skin.
So I would say I notice skin color is the first thing I notice about someone when I meet them. It's always on my mind.
My skin color is important to me just in, my mom was really weird as far as African parents. Like, a lot of African parents are known for being very, wanting their kids to be as fair skinned as possible and keeping them out of the sun and this, that, and the third, but she always admired what she called black beauties. So she was focused on the Grace Joneses of the world and the Miriam Makebas of the world. And so I remember growing up actually in Houston, and that hot ass sun beating down on me and purposefully being out in the sun longer because I wanted to be as dark as possible. As far as, my view of other people, oddly enough, I think I've skewed in the other opposite direction.
I feel that we put race above most things when it comes to socializing with people. And I just wish that we wouldn't, but it's the way that it is. Times could change, but can't necessarily foresee that yet.
Even if it means you'll never know what I felt for you. And while I sit here,
It's not important at all. It shouldn't be important because you should be dating someone based on their personality, not their skin color.
Not important either. If I like you, I like you. Don't discriminate in that department.
I wouldn't deem it necessarily important, like that's not the overall factor I'd be looking for, but I'd prefer not white. But it wouldn't stop me from talking to someone just because of their race or skin tone.
My parents are like, they're mad old school and stuff, and they're like, don't come home with no white boy and stuff. But I'm like, people are people. You gotta love everybody. If they have good vibes, if they're a good person, they treat people nicely. And if they treat you how you want to be treated, then I don't think it matters.
Wow. That's tough. Like, this kind of hurts me to say, but it's the truth. Like, white women were what I was surrounded with as a kid, like as a young kid, and that was the idea of beauty. So I feel like, yeah, it is something I think about. It's not that I don't like dark-skinned women. I've dated a few dark-skinned women. But it's definitely something on my mind, and I don't know if it's implicit, but I think it's an unconscious favoritism towards people with light skin. It sucks.
I've only had 2 serious girlfriends. Both of them have been fair-skinned. But that's more so because I tend to be more passive as far as approaching. And one thing I've realized is because of how being fair-skinned is so sort of propped up, especially within the Black community, fair-skinned girls are given more space to be more bold, more outgoing, without having negative labels attached to it. So then when it comes to seeking romantic partners, they'll go for what they want with greater abandon or greater boldness just because they know there's no social repercussions if they succeed or if they fail. Whereas those that are darker skinned, and it definitely applies to guys too, but especially for women, there's already sort of the stigma attached to if you're a woman that approaches a guy. Now add on top of that you're darker skinned, and it's less likely that, they'll approach, and I'm not good at approaching women. I never have been. Everything that I've gotten, I've lucked into.
I will say it's not so important, but then when it comes to how the people around me will view them, I still have to think about, if I take this person home, will my parents accept them?
I am nothing nothing but a puppet on a string. Now I see which way.
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible.
I feel like they're very, very objectified.
Honestly, it's always been the part that's been the more uncomfortable part for me.
Like nowadays, people want like big booty, slim waist, big titties, light skin, good hair, whatever good hair is.
The reason why I don't listen to rap a whole lot is because like a majority of the rap songs I hear, like the way they talk about women makes me feel uncomfortable.
The first rap album I bought with my own money was The Roots' Do You Want More? And the reason I gravitated towards it is that even though it had its own problematic parts, it was the most equitable representation that I'd seen up to that point that also wasn't corny.
I wish it wasn't the way that it is, because people, we listen to the music that we listen to, and what we listen to is what we think about. And if we act that way towards, or listen to them degrade women, you're gonna, I'm not necessarily saying you're gonna degrade women, but mentally you might, subconsciously.
Honestly, a lot of times it's the cop-out. It's easy to rap about the bitches and hoes, you know, because it's projection.
It's still like yellow is beautiful, light skin is beautiful, and we just get accustomed to that. You even look in pop culture, like you're gonna see a Halle Berry as the lead role before you see a dark-skinned actress, and that's unfortunate, but that's the reality.
Rap music sexualizes women so much. I don't know if it's because that's how we are supposed to be viewed, or it's because we allow ourselves to be viewed that way.
Black women aren't, praised as much in social media or rap culture as they should be.
Just double tapping on a picture of a dark-skinned black woman covered in baby oil is not undoing 400 years of conditioning, you know? All you're doing is satisfying in that moment what has always been. We've hypersexualized darker-skinned black peoples, and we have intellectualized lighter-skinned black people.
Darker-skinned women specifically are negatively represented in the media compared to lighter-skinned women.
In a lot of ways, it's something that was given to us by colonialism. It was something that's given to us by white chauvinism. It's not something that is really as organic to our more African side as people would like to believe. That's a lie that was sold. Because I know for a fact, in my family, I know my family history. And the only reason we live where we live now in my grandparents' village is because my ancestor, who didn't identify as male or female, took her entire family with them and took them there, and they were a spiritualist and all of that, and from there everything proceeded, and there's a very strong matrilineal line that runs through there. And even now it's the women that are really in control. So having the opposite of that reflected in the music that I love, that I understand the roots of, that really speaks to me, it's cognitive dissonance. There's something that's to be said where in our community we love our boys and we raise our girls. And so we create this standard where women have to fit into this very specific box, and if they're not, it's almost taken like an affront to the community overall. And it's something that's perpetuated not just by guys, but perpetuated by anybody that has sort of that archaic mindset. And it's very easy to go the misogynistic route because you know you're gonna have an audience.
That's a born car. I'm chasing dreams while you snoring. Call that black, might be yellow, but her favorite color orange. Color orange, boy. Please don't call my phone no more. I'm on tour. I'm on tour.
That's disrespectful.
I don't like him.
That right there just pisses me off, just because, you can't just say that you don't like a person because of their color.
He's black, yes. So the way he carries the black woman is disrespectful.
Those are the words of a man who has been conditioned to hate himself and hate his color and hate anything that looks like it.
Black men marry outside their race the most, and that's a shame. You know what I'm saying? It is a shame because it says something deeper about our culture that we don't think black is beautiful.
I remember I saw like this one video where he said how he doesn't date women who are like the same complexion as him, which was like mind-boggling to me.
There is no research that bears out, there's no anecdotal research, there's no scientific research, there's no anything that bears out that there's a correlation between personality type and skin tone. You know, a lot of times when you got people that, you know, believe that way to the carpet, they'll say, oh, you know, dark-skinned women, they're so aggressive and they're so argumentative and they want to do this and then.
If that's your preference, whatever, but don't put somebody else down.
I don't know what kind of light-skinned women you've been talking to, but every single one that I have ever dated, we ready to fight, okay? And maybe that's because I gravitate towards Taurus women, and Taurus women like to fight anyway, but I'm just saying, every single light-skinned woman that I've ever known has trended more towards the bold side because there's no social repercussions for it, you know? So they have the greater space to be, at times, on the more aggressive side and have it laughed off as them being cute, or, you know, oh, my little joy, she stabs me, but she's still cute. You know, that stupid shit. And at the same time, when I've dated darker skinned women, they've always been more on the meek side. So that never bore out in my personal life, and I kept like looking, and I realized that, yo, you're just projecting what you believe, like you're casting the same behaviors in different lights, simply because of where it's coming from.
But I don't like it because it just irritates me that someone's like talking about women like that when you came from a woman.
They come from black women and like they're related to black women, and so like be able to bash a woman because of that when like your mother's black, or like you have aunts or like nieces or sisters who are like that similar complexion. I feel like there's like some level of self-hate in that.
And another part of that is, you know, Kodak grew up, he's from Florida, and Florida, especially where he's from, is very known for being very color struck. Part of that is because of how a lot of white Cubans that came in and mingled with the local community, and taken into consideration also the bias of the spicy Latina, and how, you know, if she's a red bone and she a little spicy, is cute, but if she, you know, dark skinned, then there must be something wrong, and also a status symbol.
To most rappers, they view women of color as if lowering themselves.
Kodak didn't just spring up out of nowhere. He's not like a Cabbage Patch Kid that, you know, somebody walked along a briar patch and pulled him out, you know, Lisa Simpson hair and all. Like, he is a product of an environment and a continuation of generations of running towards white acceptance instead of love of self.
If our own men don't respect us, how do we expect other men to respect us?
Coming to the US and realizing that anti-blackness could be rooted in black people was really what really messed me up. Because even though I was black, I was also black and immigrant. Even though I was black, I was also black and darker skinned. And it didn't help that when I first came here, I had a very strong German accent. And I learned English in 2 weeks, which means I didn't have time to adopt any kind of accent. You know, I sounded like, they literally called me Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, it was so messed up. It was so messed up.
I always got comments like, oh, your hair is too nappy, your hair is this. You need to quit using like white products in your hair, like hair spray or mousse or something like that.
And I remember like being in 6th or 7th grade, and, you know, I found a bottle of mousse and gel, and I tried to like slick down my hair as much as possible because I wanted hair like the kids on Home Improvement. So I tried to like do the whole run my fingers through my hair thing. I was like, nah, it don't work out like that for me, bro. That ain't my portion in life. That ain't my portion in life.
I think the first time I witnessed it, I was in middle school, and there were these 2 dark-skinned girls in my class. Every other day, they would be teased by the boys in our class for like being so dark. Like, whenever our teacher would like show us a slide and like turn off the lights, they would do the, oh, where did so-and-so go joke. I
usually get overlooked a lot of the times. I mean, not that I care that much, but I get overlooked a lot of times because I'm like, you know, black power girl.
Oh my God, it was 2nd grade. It was an assembly, and I had this crush on this girl named Jasmine. And somebody who I thought was a friend decided to tell her on my behalf She turned around and looked at me like, ew, no, and turned back around. I thought it was just because she didn't like how my face looked. But, you know, just hearing her talk about me later on, all the things that she focused on, my nose being too wide, my skin being too dark, my hair not being curly.
I don't have to deal with the same issues, the same levels of overt racism on a daily basis that, you know, some dark-skinned brothers have to deal with. And that's something we should all be conscious of. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, to not be conscious of that is doing other people a disservice.
I was friends with this dark-skinned girl, and she had a crush on this guy who's like light-skinned and stuff, and like they had a friends with benefits type of situation, and like she had told him and confessed to him that like she had feelings for him, but he had said how like he won't date her because she's dark-skinned.
Growing up, it was very explicitly stated that that people of the same skin color and hair texture are the only ones that should be dating each other. You know, the fortunate part about growing up is that not a lot of these things are explicitly stated anymore, but you feel them implicitly. You know, you always walk around with that sort of paranoia, like, is somebody looking at me differently because they just don't get me or get my personality, or is it because they don't like my expression of blackness, they don't like the way I look, they don't like my skin color, they don't like my hair texture, they don't.
I'm learning to love my hair and everything, my skin, and how I look and everything.
You know, so I definitely had those internal battles. It's something that affected me. I'm sure it affects me still. It's just, you know, you get to a certain age and you have to decide whether I'm gonna live for other people's approval, I'm gonna live to be happy, you know? So that's the only thing that really changed. That's growth. Absolutely.
I'm sure I have. You know, we all have our own biases and stuff, and that's the problem is a lot of us aren't aware of it. That's not our fault. That's the fault of living in a culture and a society that has ingrained that over the last 400 years.
When I came here, I used to avoid black people because, like, how we view them from where I come from, okay, we somehow have respect for them, but then they are not as welcoming to people like us who come from Africa. So that kind of had an impact on how I socialized with them.
I'm sure I have. I'm absolutely sure I have, because like I said, growing up, and you know, I knew what I was raised with and I knew what society expected me to be with. And I remember it was middle school, and at a certain point I had to interrogate myself because I was gravitating towards all the Afro-Latinche girls. I was gravitating towards all the, you know, curly wavy girls, you know, I was gravitating towards all of that, and I realized that's not what I really grew up with. Like, why am I gravitating towards this? And I realized it was because a lot of it was sort of social conditioning meets implicit bias meets projection meets internalized issues that I wasn't ready to deal with because, I mean, I was 11, 12, 13 years old. You know, self-actualization was not a thing. I was still worried about how many cookies could I buy at lunch. I'm happy and blessed that I was and am able to interrogate those things within myself and come out the other end a little bit more mature, I'd like to think. But there are a lot of guys that still carry that with them. At the Kodaks of the world, it starts in elementary school and middle school. It starts with teachers reinforcing which girl gets in trouble when or who gets in trouble how. It starts with, you know, adults on the street randomly deciding this is pretty hair and this is not pretty hair and this is pretty eyes and this is not pretty eyes. And they think we aren't internalizing all of that, but we are. And it shapes our worldview. You know?
I think there's a lot of hate in the black community, definitely towards white people and stuff. But there's also a lot of hate within ourselves. I would just say, like, know who you are, know your history, know where you come from. Self-actualize yourself so nobody can try and change your point of view or anything. That way you'll be firm in your beliefs and love everybody.
One, you have to dismantle white supremacy first, which I'm not a historical optimist. I don't think is possible.
It has to be on purpose. None of this happened accidentally. None of the inculcation or the conditioning happened accidentally. It was purposeful. It was something that was instituted. It's something that was propagated. It was something that was rewarded. It was on purpose. All of it was on purpose. You know, the concept of a white passing black person, creating that concept was on purpose. The concept of a house slave versus a field slave, creating that concept was on purpose. The concept of, you know, educating those, you know, enslaved peoples who had children with massa as opposed to those who didn't was on purpose. This double standard was created on purpose. So us now undoing it has to be on purpose as well.
Like some parents like make comments about like don't hang outside too long or you'll get dark and stuff. So I definitely think parents could like stop making comments like that.
On the part of education, you know, we have to stop shying away from these conversations, and we have to start having very explicit dialogue about, you know, deconditioning our mind, like decolonizing our mind, and then conditioning our kids to love regardless. It's going to be on a lot of ways, it's going to be on a lot of celebrities, it's going to be a lot of entertainers, because let's just be real about it. The only consistent culture across the board in America is pop culture. Let's also be real about the fact that cultural imperialism is a thing. If the people who have been the pushers of a certain cultural phenomenon decide enough is enough and I'm going to push more healthy dialogue, that's a huge front, that's one.
We should just live with it. I'm black. I'm not going to change just because I don't like being black. So I just have to find a way to live with who I am, accept myself for who I am. Because it's me, black.
We have to interrogate internally, and then live that out in everything we do. It's difficult, it's hard work, but if 3-4 generations from now, kids aren't worried about being bullied because they have a different hair texture than kids, and kids aren't having, you know, literal caustic, toxic chemicals poured into their hair to be more acceptable in a society that oftentimes is very apathetic to their existence, then at the very least, we've made one positive step.
No, I think that's it.
That's it?
Hush not, child.